The second of the 7 churches is Smyrna. And in Greek, Smyrna means bitterness, suffering, or persecution. And Christ represents himself to that church as being the first and the last, the one that holds history in his hand, who's dead and alive now, who was dead and is alive. And of course, that's a great comfort to those in the early church who were facing persecution and death. And the second period of church history, interestingly, was a period of persecutions. There were actually 10 persecutions under the Roman Empire. And so that was a period when many Christians did lose their lives. This church is only one of 2 of the 7 that Christ did not rebuke in any way. He told them that they would have 10 days of persecution, just as there were 10 days or 10 periods of persecution under the Roman emperors, and that they were to be faithful unto death, that he would give them a crown of life, and they would not be hurt by the second death. And he told them, don't be afraid. Interestingly, the name of this second church in modern Turkish is Izmir. And Izmir in Turkish means pathway to glory or pathway to heaven. Isn't that something beautiful? The third of the 7 churches is Pergamum, or as the King James Version would say, Pergamus. Pergamum was a symbol, I believe, of the period of accommodation between Christianity and the empire. The name Pergamum in Greek means mixed marriage. And there indeed, in this period of church history after the time of Constantine, was a mixed marriage between the church or churches and the empire. And Christ presented himself as holding a sharp, 2-edged sword, and this was a call to return to the Word, I believe. And he describes the presence of false doctrine and of fornication in the church. And he exhorts the people of this church to repent. And he says that to those who do repent and walk in truth with him, he will grant to eat of the hidden manna, and that they will be given a white stone in which there is a name written which no man knows but the one who receives it. Interesting, I believe many of these were Jewish Christians in those days, and the hidden manna probably is in reference to the practice of the Passover or Pesach. And during Passover, there were 3 pieces of bread, usually separated by a napkin, and the middle one that is brought out and broken is the one that is called the Word, which is, of course, to Christians a representation of Christ. And part of that piece of bread then is hidden toward the end of the meal, and then the children who find it at the end of the meal are given a special reward. And Jesus says to him that overcomes, I will give it to eat of the hidden manna. So of special things in the future, of special rewards with God. The modern name of Pergamum sounds very similar in Turkish. The name in Turkish is Bergama. And with the help of a Turkish friend and an exhaustive Turkish dictionary, I found that the name Bergama in Turkish means house of desolation, which is interesting. When Christians compromise and adopt the pattern of the world, they leave their children desolate. The fourth of these 7 churches is Thyatira. And when I'm looking historically and thinking of what has happened historically, I would think that this would represent the prominent church age in which ecclesiastical power was upheld in the Byzantine and Roman Empire, in the Roman churches. And this is a period of time we know as the Dark Ages. The word Thyatira in Greek implies continual sacrifice. And I think these Dark Ages saw an emphasis on salvation through the continual sacrifice of the Mass, believing that Christ was being re-sacrificed each time the Mass was offered, and then penances, indulgences, sacramental works. The multitudes were sacrificed to this system through crusades and inquisitions. And so that was a dark time in history where Christianity had lost many of its moorings. Of Christ presents himself to that church as having eyes like a flame of fire, feet like fine brass, all symbolic of discernment of men's hearts, of a certainty of judgment. And the description of this church is that it's led by a Jezebel, a woman who leads God's servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed to idols. And Christ tells this church to repent, to hold on to what truth they have, and the promise that if they truly repent, he will give them power over the nations, that they will rule with a rod of iron, obviously I think speaking of a millennial reign of Christ, and they will be given the morning star. The modern name of this town, when I first there it was kind of a village, but now it's quite a town. But the modern name is Akhisar, which in Turkish means white or whitewashed fortress. And I couldn't help when I discovered that of thinking of Christ's words to the religious leaders during his time on earth in Palestine, where he said that they were like whited sepulchres, that on the outside they looked good, but on the inside they were full of corruption.